Welcome to the Dr. Frank and Steve podcast with your hosts, Dr. Frank Williams and Dr. Steve Snodgrass, MD, FACS, where we discuss a broad range of topics without limitations. Let's get to it. Here's Dr. Frank and Dr. Steve.
Hello, welcome back. This is Dr. Frank and Steve podcast. I'm your host, Frank Williams. This is Dr. Stephen Snodgrass, MD, FACS. We are going to be continuing our series on masculinity in crisis. This is part 2. Hopefully you've seen part 1. If not, I would suggest you go back and watch it and then watch this one. Give us a like or subscribe if you find the content interesting. We're always available, for comments or contact. So anytime you need something, you can find the links right in the channel there. So without further ado, we'll start off again with Dr. Steve and the medical part. And then I'll interject in, and today we'll be covering more medical, we'll be covering faith, we'll be covering, actually going over some stuff on birth control medicines for, females, actual females, and what that'll do. That's pun intended. And how that affects masculinity. So, Steve, now I got you woken up.
Yeah, it's like if you thought last week was exciting, it's nothing like this week. So if you're a cardiac patient, you just really need to just settle down and watch it.
Or if you're an insomniac.
Yes, there's a lot of medical things related to this. And like you have no idea of the amount of products that are out there, that we're going to discuss today. But going back, I'm not going to repeat what I did last time, but I'm just going to say high levels of estrogen in men produce infertility, erectile dysfunction, and gynecomastia. And I want to go over gynecomastia because
I was hoping you would.
Well, I know that it's a topic that's on your mind constantly. But anyway, it's a topic that I think is misunderstood, and it really needs to be kind of cleared up. But basically, it's enlargement of breast tissue, and breast tissue is made up of glandular tissue, and there's a firmer, dense connective tissue as well as fat. And so fat deposits fill the space between the glandular tissue and the firmer, dense connective tissue. So, you can have more fat, you can have more glandular tissue, so it just kind of depends. But gynecomastia, a lot of times is, it's like a firm, dense area beneath the nipple, and it needs to get checked out because you don't know what it is a lot of times, but it's not pre-malignant. So I wanted to bring that up. But this is, and it's also sore and tenderness a lot of times, but so it's different from just being fat. But I wanted to get this out of the way first because it was so confusing when I read it when it first came out. But there's a pretty famous guy who's a TV star and movie star. I'm not going to mention his name, but he said that he was shown at the beach with his shirt off, and he had like enlarged breast tissue. And he said the reason that I have my quote man boobs unquote is because of soy. I'm dropping all of soy products, and that's the reason that I'm like that. So I want to cover that. And just to say, like, what he's saying is just not correct. It's just not correct. But soy contains phytoestrogens. That just means they're plant-based estrogens. And isoflavones are a type of phytoestrogen that it's a compound that's found in soybeans. And they do not increase estrogen levels in the body. They bond estrogen receptors. Remember we talked about the parking lots.
Yeah.
And
person doesn't get used.
Yeah. So the isoflavone compound, it will sit on those receptors and actually can be anti-estrogen because it can block those receptors, because if the isoflavones are sitting inside the parking spot, well, the real estrogen can't sit there. So it can actually be anti-estrogenic. And it's about 1,000 times weaker than the normal estrogen that flows through the human body. So if you're saying, oh, the reason I have man boobs is because I'm eating soy product, you're going to have to just be eating it all day, every day. It's not feasible. But there's a lot of confusion about that, so I wanted to end that right now. And it seems like it's a lot more than what you think, because it's all over the internet all the time. But that's the bottom line. So going through these things, I want to say that estrogenic just means it just mimics estrogen. And so all of these things that we're getting ready to mention are estrogenic. And one is called, there's a compound, a class called estrogens, which are fungus estrogens. And they're seen in grains, coffee, chocolate, and foods susceptible to mold during storage. And one of these is called zearalenone, or ZEA, and it's a mycoestrogen, and it's legally limited in Russia and Europe and 16 other countries, but not in the United States. And it's also found in corn and soybeans, and there's the potential that ZEA may cause liver tumors. So it's one of those things that I believe I think all of these things are going to be the MAHA targets.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them are already, and I'm thankful for that, because, you know, profit over health is not always a good thing.
No, it's not, but it's certainly seen, that's for sure. The other one is called atrazine. It's a herbicide, and it's banned in the European Union, but not the United States. And again, all of these things that we're talking about are going to have to be dealt with some way, somehow. And I feel like Mr. Kennedy will do that. And the other one that to discuss is soap estrogens, or triclosan. They're antimicrobial agents. They're widely used in personal products, like think soap, hand sanitizer, toothpaste to kill bacteria and fungi. Also found like in cleaning products and even some fabrics. And it's been banned in over-the-counter bacterial soaps, but it's still allowed in mouthwash and toothpaste. So if you see that on the ingredient list, back away from it, because as you know, Mary Lee's a pharmacist. She's into all this stuff, and so we use these kinds of products that do not have these estrogenic compounds in them. So I think she just gives me just estrogen straight out.
Little arsenic on the side.
And estrogen and arsenic, yes. The other thing is called alkyphenols, and they're just called APEs for short, but it's a class of synthetic compounds, and they're used in various industrial and consumer products, detergents, lubricants, pesticides, and again, they're called APEs, but they're not required to be listed on ingredient labels. And so they're found, again, soaps, anti-static agents, hair care products, additives, plastics, toothpaste. China restricts APEs. The European Union has completely banned them. The United States has no ban. No ban yet. No. But I think it's telling that all these things that we're talking about have been dealt with in other countries to limit exposure to the citizens,
right? But
not here. So, that's.
And you would think, being the most industrialized, first world nation, that would be the opposite.
Yeah,
I know we have a free market economy, and I'm a big free market, guy. However, it does you no good to have a free market and a thriving, having the #1 nation in the world if they're the #1 most unhealthiest nation in the world at the same time.
Yeah. And this kind of podcast, it's going to be one where it's not going to be some sort of big 4th of July fireworks kind of thing, but it's something that you need to pay attention to because it just so this kind of education, I think, is very important to help progress with the Make America Healthy Again movement. Another one is sunscreen estrogens. Benzophenone 4 is a UV filter commonly used in sunscreens and other cosmetic products like bath products, makeup, hair products, and skincare products. And it has been linked to cause cancer.
And what's it called again?
It's benzophenone 4. And so you need to look for that in your ingredients. And look, I mean, I look at, there are sunscreens that do not have that, but just think about it. If you're using a sunscreen that has that compound in it, how many kids get sunscreen applied every day? And so, and just
when you go out that door, make sure you put that sunscreen on.
Yeah, and so if you look at it that way, prolonged exposure over time, I think, that's the whole thing about all of this is prolonged exposure over time. We don't know exactly what that's going to cause. And so I think those are the kinds of things that we have to be aware of. And benzophenone 4 is banned in the European Union, but not the United States. So again, another example. Now we go into the red numbers, 3 and 40, the artificial food coloring, and found in soda, candies, gelatin, desserts, salad, dressings, salmon, chicken. So red dye number 3 has been linked to cancer and behavioral issues, and it's been banned. And now the talk is red dye number 40, which I think that is the one that is Mr. Kennedy is targeting right now. And red dye number 40 presently is approved by the FDA for use in food, beverages, medication, cosmetics. And it's the thing about it is all this stuff is just marketing ploys. There's no reason for it, but people think like they associate color with flavors. So so all these marketing studies that have been done, if you see like purple, then you think like, well, that's got a great flavor, so it's going to be good. And then if you've got yellow, it's mostly implies that it's lemon. And for red, it implies cherry, strawberry, or raspberry flavoring. So all it is just a marketing ploy. It doesn't serve any kind of purpose. But gelatin, puddings, beverages, alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic, dairy products, frosting, fruits, bakery products, jams, condiments, meat, poultry. Yeah, it can even be found in crayons, pens, and markers. So it's everywhere. And so preliminary evidence is showing that red dye number 40 may make certain mental conditions worse, especially in kids. They're looking at like ADHD. They're not saying it causes it, but they're saying it can make it worse. And so the whole point, it's also right now, it's regulated through batch certification. So anytime a new batch of product will come out, the FDA will do certain batch studies. They won't look at every single package. They'll say they'll look at this batch. And then, but natural dyes, once they get approved, they're approved forever. So that's the way the process goes. But red dye 40 is on its way out. And some of these things, I just can't believe that the penetration of the compounds and the product lines. I mean, just think about, when you like go from a range of like toothpaste to frosting for cake mix. I mean, just look at
that's a broad range.
It's just everything. That's everything. And another one is called Parabens, and it's a group of synthetic compounds that have multiple uses. Again, cosmetics, lotions, sunscreen, makeup, shampoo, conditioners, deodorant. And they're also seen in food and beverages, like jams, sauces, soft drinks, and other processed foods. Even medications use them as preservatives. And sometimes they're called the fragrance estrogens.
So let me ask a question. Is that more based scientifically for preserving products longer? Is it also not just for the color and the appeal, to be more addictive, but is it for, again, preserving, does it
add shelf life?
Yes, does it add shelf life?
Yeah.
And is it that big of a difference having it in and not having it in? Because, when I was younger, lived over in Great Britain and Europe for a short time in Great Britain, you could tell the difference in when you went out to eat or you ate something, there was a huge difference in your taste buds. I used to say your taste buds here in the US versus your taste buds overseas, because there's just a difference. But once you get used to it, it's natural. You come back here and you're like, ooh, that's really salty. Ooh, that's really got a all flavor to it. So you have to get accustomed to it, which we do as Americans because we're born and raised into all this. Yeah. But I think it's time for America, the Maha movement. You and I both are big behind that, to get healthy again. And one of the big things, getting rid of all this crap. So what if your profits go down a little bit? I'm not being anti-capitalist, but if that's going to save somebody from mental health issues or exacerbating their depression, maybe their health issues causing you to get cancers or causing you to get, even if it's benign tumors and stuff, which it sounds like in certain areas, who needs all of that?
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, and you read constantly, and one of the things that I want people to understand is that whatever you do, like in childhood, even in childhood, and people, if you're like, 10, 12 years old or whatever, you don't ever think like, well, what is my body going to be like at 60?
Right.
I mean, you don't, and the two major decades where physical change takes place the most are in the 40s and the 60s. And people don't even think like that because we just don't. But I think we need to start thinking more of both the acute as well as the chronic and the long term. I think that is a mentality that has to be set in. So like, I used to always say like, well, it may not make any difference like right now, but what is it going to be like 10 years from now? Is it going to affect you 10 years from now? And like for parabens, they're banned in the European Union, but here they've been deemed generally used as safe by the FDA in cosmetic and personal hair products, but when used within prescribed limits. And so I looked up, well, the prescribed limits, what does that even mean?
Exactly.
And like for food, it's like if it's 0.1% of the total, then that should not be allowed. But personally, I think you just need to look and go paraben free, and that's PARABEN, and I think you need to go paraben free. And all of these things that I'm talking about, I do it, my wife and I practice what we preach. And these products that contain these estrogenic compounds, they are not in our home. So,
and yes, for whatever reason, taking ingredients out makes the product more expensive sometimes. But I think overall, if it's mass produced, that shouldn't hurt it a bit.
No. And you got to think like, if you're going to build in healthcare costs in relation to this topic,
exactly,
what does that cost?
Yes.
We don't know that yet. So, and I don't even know if you can know that. But if you think about like some of these things that are causing detrimental physical effects to your body, then what is it? Yeah, it may make more money on that end, but what's it doing on this end? What's the cost could be
Yeah,
overwhelming.
and if you're paying out a little more for these products now, as you said, what's the healthcare savings down the road by not developing some of these, collateral health issues and problems, or possibly chronic problems down the road? So it's going to even itself out.
I mean, I think if you look at it this way, the way I feel about it is that if you take these products out of your life, then I think that healthcare savings are going to be significant. And so anything that we can do to help that kind of problem, we need to address.
Absolutely.
So number one, it's going to make people less susceptible to physical and mental problems down the line, and it's going to save healthcare dollars. So I think that needs to be looked at. And this one is called phthalates. They're a group of chemicals, so they're mostly used as plasticizers, which means they're added to plastics to make them more flexible, transparent, durable, and longer lasting. They're seen in conditioners, fragrances, and literally in about every food group. They're also associated with polyvinyl chloride-based products, or PVC, because like PVC is a rigid plastic, and so the phthalates are added to PVCs to soften them, make them more pliable. And so it's like that's in shower curtains, vinyl flooring, soft plastic toys, and food packaging. So if you think about it, look at what you're putting in your body.
Quite a bit, yes.
I mean, look at what you're putting in your body. They're in cosmetics, perfumes, nail polish, lotions, many medical devices, food containers, household items, perfumes, even in contact lens. So you just don't think of exposure like that. But it's time we did. They're banned in the European Union, but not in the United States. So I think that we're going to have to address that. So to reduce your exposure, you can choose products, and a lot of them are labeled phthalate free, and that is PHTHALATE. Phthalate free is what you want to do, and avoid PVC products, and use glass or stainless steel containers for food storage. We've gone over that when we did our microplastics. So that's just additive to what we had talked about before. But if you think about it, the exposure, that's especially like in water bottles and all that sort of thing to make, because you can just crush your water bottle. And so all of these things are something we're going to have to look into more than what we've ever looked at before. And now we're going to BPA and BPS, and that's bisphenol estrogenic plastic ingredients, bisphenol A and S. And A is the most well known, and it's in many consumer products, including water bottles, baby bottles, and can linings. And BPS is felt to be a little bit safer and an alternative, but it's still not there. And so a lot of times marketing ploys will say this product is BPA free.
Yes.
But it contains BPS. So you're really not, you think you're like, oh, I'm getting a healthier choice here, but you're really not, because it still contains the bisphenol. So it's one of those things, it's preferred, but still both have been linked to health concerns, including cancer. So just to know, BPA does not mean BPS free. So you just need to look at that. And one that was mentioned too was lavender scents. That it could mimic estrogen and everything. My wife says like she doesn't really believe that, for what that's worth. But books talk about it, and they say that lavender oil and tea tree have been linked to gynecomastia And I think there's more research required here.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I don't know about you, but I haven't used anything with lavender since. And I'm really not planning on it. So I'm just not gonna go like, hey, where can I get my lavender today?
Yeah.
So now the next one, some of this stuff gets kind of frightening. If it's not frightening enough already.
If you stay awake long enough to hear it.
Can you?
Yes.
We're asking you, can you?
Yes, please do.
Yes.
It'll get more interesting.
Well,
This is interesting to me, but for some people maybe.
Well, some people may just think like, oh, gosh, I'm really bored with it, and I get that. But it's one of those things where people have to understand how commonplace this is, and they must not just focus on what is happening today, what is happening decades.
And it does affect your masculinity.
It does.
Yeah. Because all that crap in your body.
This next one is really kind of like frightening to me.
Man buns unite.
There you go. Drinking water. In a systematic review of studies investigating estrogenic compounds in drinking water around the world, showed 16 estrogenic compounds in drinking water. 16. And phthalate is the highest one. So, that's pretty telling. So water treatment plants, they can remove bacteria, parasites, but most are not functional in regards to removing estrogenic compounds. And so what they're talking about now is developing newer, more modern technologies to rid the drinking water supply of these hormones. But they are there. They are there. And the contamination route is through direct disposal of domestic and industrial wastewater and receiving water bodies as well as wastewater treatment plants. And the contaminants reach surface waters and they're transported and become available in drinking water. So, what does it mean? How does that apply in regards to what we're seeing in the birth control pills? Over 100 million women take birth control pills around the world. So that's a synthetic estrogen. And some of this synthetic estrogen is found in drinking water, and the so-called experts feel that it's an insignificant amount because when pregnant women urinate, it's found in some of those estrogenic compounds are found in drinking water. And they say it's a very low level. And so what difference does it make? But if you start if your drinking water contains estrogenic compounds and you start doing that as an infant or whatever, and then what's that going to do to you over decades of time? Or maybe not even that long a period. But it's one of those things, it's cumulative, it's additive, and it's a problem. And what they have to do to fix it is to modernize water treatment plants and systems. So the next one here is another one that I found. I found this one pretty fascinating. Pregnant cow milk. Increased levels of cow estrogen and farmers will continue to collect this pregnancy hormone-laden milk. They don't stop collecting the milk. And the placenta is the primary source of estrogen in cow's milk. And it's secreted into the milk. And high levels of cow estrogen in grocery store purchased whole milk, as well as the urine of boys and men after drinking whole milk, have been noted. And testosterone levels were shown to be decreased within 1 hour after drinking milk. So that's pretty telling.
That is.
And we are the only mammals who drink the milk of another mammal by choice. We're the only ones that do that. And so if you look at it just overall, the testicles are impacted by estrogen levels, especially in regards to testicular development, spermatogenesis. Males are feminized by estrogenic. Sperm counts have dropped in healthy men, and semen quality is poor. And so all of these estrogen-containing products are leading to these kinds of problems. They decrease testosterone and increase sex hormone binding globulin, which we talked about before, so that decreases active testosterone. So just looking at my research on this whole topic, we're exposed to so many estrogenic compounds in the past compared to what we are now. I mean, it's just like there's so much more estrogen exposure than there was decades ago.
In daily life.
Yeah, I may have misspoke earlier, but
that's okay.
But anyway, the estrogenics now are much worse than they were in decades past. So, like anything else, we bring about awareness and education, and hopefully this will help shine a light on this problem, because all of these things are going to be addressed in the MAHA movement.
Yes.
It's just a matter of time. Yeah. And I feel like that we're a little bit ahead of things here.
Yeah, and the more you know, the more you can maybe make a plan of action for you and your family.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that difficult. My daughters do it. My wife, I mean, like Mary Lee does, Steve's wife. You know, they research and make sure of what they're actually getting, what is the actual ingredients in it, and if there's any things that aren't listed, they're actually in there.
Yeah.
You know,
and I just look at like our products in our house, and it's just like our products are so different than what they used to be, like just not that long ago. It's just like, you know, we've changed like toothpaste, mouthwash, deodorant, cleaning agents. You know, we have really,
as long as you start using them, we're good.
But you know, it's just, when you think about it, if something can be used in your deodorant, it can also be used in your floor cleaner, and it can also be used in your food. I mean, that just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. That's kind of gross in one way. And
I mean, really? I mean, what are we supposed to do? Just like, well, I'll just have a bowl of Lysol for lunch.
You're embalming yourself early.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. But if you think about it, and by the way, I don't know whether Lysol has any of that stuff in it or not.
Yeah, it's just a pun.
It's a general thing, but you know, hey, Lysol, you got to take a jump.
Yeah.
But anyway, the whole point is, you take something, throw it in a mop bucket, mop your floor with it, then you can use it for deodorant, then you can use it for perfume, then you can use it in your water bottle, then you can use it in cleaning cooking your food and eating it. I mean, look at the wide range of that. That's everything. That's all encompassing.
It's just like the petroleum-based products. They're in literally everything, and you're like, or petroleum sludge, you know, from the VAT systems, and you're like, the processing systems they put in stuff. You know, as we spoke about in the last podcast or part one, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
You know, and how that's gotten by for decades and decades and decades, as you were saying, it is beyond me, because you would think somebody, doesn't matter if you're on the left, on the right, in the center, up, down, whatever floats your boat, somebody would have came out and tried to push this. But I would say, because of the lobbying experts, this is my opinion, I believe Steve's, is that the lobbying efforts have been so great, and there's so much money flows in, that a lot of that's always fallen on deaf ears.
Yeah, it just
Until
seems,
now.
Yeah, all this petroleum-based stuff that you're seeing, like, you know, like these red dyes and everything, and you think they're kind of cool, like when you're a little kid, just like, oh, what color cupcake do you want? Or you know, you just think they're kind of in
lavender.
Yeah, it's just all marketing. You know, it's just like your mother.
Baby wants a lavender cupcake.
Yeah, it's just like your mother should just say, "Why don't you just go ahead and suck the muffler instead?"
Yeah,
it's just, you know, it's just. I didn't have any idea of how the penetration of estrogenic products had made its way into our entire way of life. And then when you look at it, it's, you know, most of these things are completely banned everywhere, except here.
and it's more prevalent now because, as most of you know, Steve spoke, he has a grandson. I have nephews, and I have 3 daughters, so I'm sure at some point My grandchildren, be it boys or girls, but especially boys, I want them to be a gentleman, but to be as manly as possible. And we don't need outside influences from, everyday life, such as the things we're talking about, to influence that one way or another, because it does seriously influence it. I mean, you'd be amazed at what can influence, masculinity in males, and, from social constructs to, dietary habits to, like you said, your drinking water. I mean, that's insane to think there's that much. And if, a lot of guys don't like, if you're trying to be healthy and not use a plastic bottle, so I'll just use my tap water at my house, keep refilling my stainless steel container or my glass container, and then you're getting twice as much estrogen, because you're doing what you think is right. I mean, there's got to be concerted effort to make sure that everything is, and I think they're doing that now, fortunately, but is attacked all at once so that one area doesn't increase while another area is being banned or decreased. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and we use water filters, and we try to just, we're cognizant of all of this.
Right.
And so we try to do our best, to at least limit our exposure. I mean,
Right.
you may not be able to eliminate it completely,
But you can cut it down a whole lot until it is banned.
yeah, you can. And so I would think that would be my take home point, is realize that estrogenic compounds are basically everywhere, and it wasn't like that a long time ago, compared to what it is now. And if you look at, like, the way that meat is treated with, hormones and steroids and all that sort of thing, it's just different than it was in the past to a certain degree. And so anyway, we are making the right moves with the Make America Healthy Again movement, and that's basically all I got. But I figured, like, that's enough science for today.
And it's good science. So, you can impress your friends, or if somebody's talking a bunch of bull, you've got scientific facts now that back you up. And say, no, that might be BPA free, but can you tell me if that's BPS free? Well, same thing, and no, because we've done that when we switched out. That was the first thing we did to try and get healthy, years ago, away from, took everything that was plastic, went to BPA free. Mm-hmm. But you don't realize there might be BPS in it. You don't think to ask that. Yeah. Because it's just, oh, that's BPA free, man. I'll pay a little more money for that. And you don't realize you're still getting stuck.
And now you know that Parabens is not 2 Mercedes. So now you know.
That's probably one of the worst grandpa jokes we've heard. But Mercedes, we look for your sponsorship at any time.
Well,
you're investing billions here in the U.S. currently to make it American made. You can invest in a Dr. Steve and Frank podcast, because even though I'm Italian, baby, we still American made. And
I thought it was a pretty good, clean joke for me, because it does not match my personality.
No,
I'm more of a Richard Pryor, George Carlin kind of.
And since we're getting ready to go into not only birth control for a little bit, but also, religion and masculinity, it's good that you kept it clean.
So it's like, oh, that's so corny, but it's the best I can do without using a bunch of choice words.
Yeah.
So just take
the medical community will find it hilarious.
So it's like, oh, that was so fun.
Yeah.
Side splitting, wasn't it?
Yes. Good one.
Yes. That's all I got in this thing, because people can only stand so much science,
right?
Because it overwhelms a lot.
It does.
I mean, I was reading.
You should listen to it 2 or 3 times at least and subscribe, because that way you catch everything.
And I was reading through all this, and I'm going like, does this ever end? Because it just kept throwing you to different places that you just think, like, I had no idea about the penetration of estrogenics into the marketplace. Mm-hmm. So anyway,
and you were speaking of birth control, and I'm just going to speak on that for a couple minutes and then go on to our final little segment. But there's that hormonal birth control, especially when it's initiated during, like, adolescence. That can influence not only, like, women's health, but also men's experiences as far as masculinity and, their perceptions of masculinity, because in the United States, girls begin hormonal, like birth control pills a lot of times as soon as they start menstruating. Sometimes doctors won't put them on there. And typically that's around age 12. And I've even heard where because of the diet or lack of exercise, all these, they're looking at doing it at even earlier ages. And I'm like, that's kind of insane to do that because, the potential effects on female development is their moods and their mental health. And studies have found, and you go to NIH, along with I think the CDC has a couple studies, but adolescents using hormonal contraceptives have reported higher levels of depression and stress than those who are not on it. And they say, oh, it's good for acne, it's good for this, it's good for this, it'll really work. As far as brain development, use during puberty may alter the resting state functional connectivity in the brain, particularly in the salience network. And I know I sound like Steve now because I don't want to get too far into science, which is involved in determining, filtering salient stimuli. So in other words, it can affect their moods. We'll just make it simple. And then, it can also, which I found fascinating, it can alter their partner preferences. By being on birth control, hormonal contraceptives can influence women's preference for male partners, potentially favoring less masculine traits. I didn't know that. So by favoring a less masculine trait, that is culturally can affect masculinity because men pick up on that, and they pick up because women want behaviors more, maybe a little effeminate in some areas because of birth control. I know this sounds like it's out there, but there's studies and there's been books written on one. I'll introduce one here in a second. We're getting nothing out of it. Just one of my students, I've had two of them that are psychologists. I actually recommend it if I, go ahead and read over it and maybe find some interesting tidbits for the podcast for what I'm doing. But changes in women's attraction patterns and emotional responses due to hormonal contraceptives, that can impact your relationship stability, which also influences how males not only experience but perceive masculinity because they're picking up on that. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So, and there's a fascinating book on it, and that's all I'm going to say on contraceptives, and like Steve said, make sure. But this is not something we're promoting, so we're not conning it, but the information from that, some of that besides the NIH, all came from This Is Your Brain on Birth Control by Sarah E. Hill, PhD. The only reason I mention that, I don't want somebody saying, or her saying, hey, that Dr. Frank and Steve, I'm gonna give them a little masculine when I put something upside their head. It's bizarre to me because, we are such, especially here in the US, we are such a dominantly pro-medicine nation that for whatever reason, stick on this med. Well, they're having a reaction. Well, we'll try this different medication or dosage. And we've talked about this many times on the podcast. Let's give them this medication to counteract the effects of that medication. Let's not look at the root causes, as we've said many times, and you've definitely said, is it diet? Is it health? Is that affecting the mental health? The receptors in the brain, all that. Is it lack of exercise? What are the root causes that we can work on? Do they need emotional health? Do they need physical health? Is it, like you said, dietary? So all those areas have to be looked at because no matter what, being one of the most unhealthiest nations in the world, we have got to get back to, and Maha's, I think, is great for that, but we've got to make a concerted effort as, not just in the US, but around the world to saying, if we have the ability to eat healthier, to exercise, be more socially active, be more masculine in men, you're going to have a better overall society to begin with. Because we need, no matter what anybody says, and I say there's a couple of white guys you can say, but you need strong, masculine males. I'm not talking about bullies. I gave you my opinion on that before. You need strong, masculine males who are, hunter-gatherers and providers and security, all those things, but at the same time can be nurturing and can be, soft-spoken, but spoken out about things that just aren't right. And we see that because I always look at it from some weird scientific points sometimes, like what we've had, some of the violent attacks on subways in New York, knife attacks around countries, school shootings. What are the effects on some of these people with their minds, with their dietary habits, and these shooters or these stabbers that do all this, catching a woman on fire on the subway? Why several people are filming it, but there's no one, and it's not toxic masculinity to sit there, if that person's doing that, try and help the woman, and then you have to sit there and handle the situation of the person that's actually committing the crime or committing the heinous act by dealing with them in the appropriate manner, which we all have our opinions on. But Steve and I have the same opinion on that. You just take care of business there. But is all that affected by what we're talking about? Because these males are more afraid to act and more afraid to act out because of liability, because they don't feel as manly. They're not as secure in their manhood and their masculinity. See, that's all psychological, but it's also, I think that bears, if somebody's doing studies, and I'm sure there are, looking into that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you get copycats, you get everybody in the world who wants to go viral on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it might be. And so if people let them get by with it, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself if you're a male, especially, and something's going on, and you don't at least call the police, try and step in to prevent someone from getting hurt real bad. I'm not saying you have to be a hero, because a lot of times it's better to be a live witness than a dead hero. However, there are a lot of times when people could interact, or there's multiple guys around. You just need to say, hey man, let's grab this person and let's subdue them, till the police get here and do whatever. So that's just my little timing on that, my little tirade. And I just wanted to bring that
That's
up.
quite all right. Just go right on. I guess, you can take that, that violent aggressor, and you can put them down and then spray them with some of these things we're talking about. Calm them down. It's like,
Not pepper foam or pepper spray. I'm gonna spray you with estrogen if you don't settle down.
yeah, exactly.
Then he's gonna tighten his band button and go ahead and
It's
sit
just
down.
like, okay, boy, you're gonna get a dose here.
Yeah. And if you don't like that, don't worry, it's not harmful. It's got a lavender scent.
Exactly.
As your wife watches this podcast, you know what really smacks you. So now, taking a different view in our last little segment here, I want to just cover some things, and Steve's going to interject too, as a Bible study teacher.
Yes.
Not. And, but is, the relationship with masculinity and faith. So, I did some study on this, and then I did some in-depth research on it, and it found it quite fascinating because, don't want to hear a million emails that, oh, you're just anti-LGBTQ, A, B, C, D plus, bigot. That's not what this is. I'm giving you from my viewpoint and what, is said. And if that's a different viewpoint than you, great. That's why we're built the way we are. Everybody has their own. But I'm coming from research and facts, and not necessarily your truth, because as the former president said, facts don't matter, truth does. And I've heard that several times. Well, truth is, that's scalable, and that's subjective to what you believe, not necessarily what is true. Facts are always facts, period. So that's what I'm going off of. Because people always say, well, Jesus never said anything about a man and being male and being this and that. And so actually he did. There's Matthew 19:4-5, which speaks about male and female and the two becoming one flesh. It does not say anything about male and male or female and female, whatever. It says male. And I'm approaching this from a masculine standpoint. So don't send me hate stuff, because if you do, I'll answer it. You're probably not going to like my response. So I'm just trying to prepare you now. And then, the same way we approach it from masculinity in the Bible, we approach womanhood. because that's a beautiful thing. So Jesus praises, women in the Bible, and he talks about the male, leadership and service and areas, and what Jesus is affirming in all his different. And I've got a ton of Bible verses here if you'd like to see it. If you have a different kind of Bible, that's not my issue. You can look at mine and compare it to yours. Jesus reaffirmed gender as created by God. It's not a mistake. It's not interchangeable. It is what it is. So if you're a male, you need to act like a male. Okay. And when you have masculinity in Christ, and I'm speaking for me as a Christian, you have a responsibility in leadership, and sacrifice, nurturing. If you're a female, your strength is like your faith, your influence on your partner or your male, the person you're dating, in a good way, and using wisdom to do that. There's a spiritual equality within the Christian community, especially, where there's different roles, but they're equal roles. So, when it comes to dating, I found this fascinating that a lot of Christians start dating younger than people who are non-Christians. So it's like 74%. Secular dating starts, close to about 18 years old sometimes. Sometimes social trends will help, but most of the time, the majority of them have not started dating until they're in their late 20s, as we talked about in the last podcast. And I find that absolutely amazing. Because as a lot of I've talked about before, living on my own since the age of 16. I'm not going to say I was a hoe dog, but I was definitely masculine. And I know Steve had to be too. And when you look at the masculinity, and what I'm saying is getting into a civil group or getting into a good, doctrinally sound church, this is my little promote for that. So if you don't like this part, turn it off. It has its advantages because Christians age 30 to 49, over 60% of them are married. If you look at the unaffiliated groups of non-Christians, they're only at like 37% married. So that's a huge difference. That's almost double. And evangelicals have the highest marriage rates at about 67%. Because Christianity promotes marriage as sacred, dating is sacred with respect, and being kind, opening doors, as you were talking about during the last podcast.
It may not be just for Bo Derek, but you just need to do it anyway.
Yes, that's right. But back then, it was especially for Bo Derek.
Especially for Bo Derek, yes.
And if you look at children and fertility within, the masculine realm, Christian women average about 2.7 children globally. And then non-Christian, they average about 1.6 children, especially here in the U.S. So there's a huge difference there. And when you look at this, you can look at just a couple verses that kind of back that up and kind of, summarize this. If you look at Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Proverbs, 31, virtuous women as wise, hardworking, and praise. And then in 1 Peter 3:7, it also says husbands to honor their wives as heirs of grace, which means that, again, masculinity is not bullying. It is you have that manly presence about you, that you're hardworking, but you're also responsible for yourself, your family, your community, and those around you. And by doing that, man, you can build one of the strong, as we've seen, you can build one of the strongest nations, bar none.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you didn't mention that verse, I was going to.
I'm glad you did. I know it's been on your mind. Because biblical roles basically in masculinity, they're not about control. They're about mutual love, submission, and mission on both ends. And a godly home is, sorry, all you boos. A godly home is it is based on thriving respect, dignity, and communication. Because that's one of the biggest things. A lot of guys think they're masculine. They hold all their feelings in. They hold their, what they want to say in and do. Sometimes they have to be reminded from a strong woman, as love and wisdom to keep those lines of communication. Because you keep the stress levels down on the person also. So as you go through, you may want to, like I said, consider getting involved in a local church. I don't care if you're atheist, agnostic, or whatever. If you're going to do your research, do actual research. Do not be listening to podcasts only that doesn't have scriptural, doctrinally sound facts to back up what they're saying. And so as you go forward in your masculinity, these young males, you need to look, and we as a culture need to develop more and more young uh, role model type classes and events and areas for, and I'm just talking about males here, for young males to get involved in so that they can learn. We talked about this last time. Learn how it is to be a male and what it is to be an actual, masculine provider and socially, you might be socially awkward in being masculine also because, I've been, and believe it or not, I've held a door open for somebody that's a female at somewhere and gotten yelled at about it. They're like, open a door, say, oh, you can go ahead of me. I can hold my own door. Being a gentleman, I said, that's okay. Go ahead. I was going to make a call, so I wanted to stand here and not bother you by a bit. I just thought, oh, okay. And I'm like, wow, somebody hit Karen on the wrong day. So all you can do, even if you get some setbacks, is as Steve said this last time, and I think it's very poignant and a very powerful point. Try and do something every day that reaffirms your masculinity, but also is a learning process to get you out of your comfort zone so that you can show the world that you're masculine, but you're not a bully and that you don't have toxic masculinity. And that's where I'll leave that on that for now.
Okay. So, I've got one closing thing.
You can make it.
Are you ready for it?
I hope so. I might have to edit, but go ahead.
No. As you know, and what I've done is you had given me your Bible, and
Yes.
I'm reading it, and I'm trying to read it straight through. I am reading it straight through.
A study Bible.
Yeah, and I'm reading it straight through, and it's it's quite a bit of work actually.
It is.
To try to comprehend it all. But I figure I'm actually just about finished with Daniel, so I'm making some progress.
Yes.
And for me, basically a heathen, I'm really doing pretty good in the fact that I'm reading this Bible and it's starting to really kind of come together for me. But here's a question. Now, if David, as in David and Goliath, if David had drunk whole milk an hour before he fought Goliath, would he have fought him? Because obviously his estrogen level would be up and his testosterone level would be down. So I'm saying, if he would have drunk that cow's milk or used some of these estrogenic products, he may not have faced Goliath and hence changed the whole thing. How about that?
And that is why he's still studying. So, with that note, also want to say thank you to Dr. Jen and Dr. Jill for, my discussions on this.
But hey, wouldn't you admit, David was a manly man.
Oh, absolutely.
He was a manly man.
King, let me give you your armor. No, it's too heavy. It's too big. I'll just go out there with my sling and 5 rocks.
Wasn't he like Goliath, like basically 9 feet tall? I think
he was tall.
Yeah,
and it is not just historically, but archaeologically they have found bones of people during that era. Easy research to do. Where there were giants impacted, just as we have guys that play 7 foot something that play basketball now. There were people back in those days who were, had that whatever they called it. Now science tries to say it was a genetic defect. I forget what it's called, but for people to be a giant. But yes, he was huge.
Yeah, and so I'm just saying, if he hadn't been a manly man, he would have never faced it. That's my whole point.
Yeah, that was God being with him also. So yes, he was a very devout, and he wasn't perfect, but
he wasn't perfect, but he was a manly man.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's my whole point. He was a manly man, and if he would have been exposed back in those days, if he had been exposed to all this estrogenic stuff, he may not, he's like, I'm not gonna find. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so let's do. So as always, we appreciate you as our audience. We are growing. We will have more and more stuff coming out for the podcast. We hope you continue to be with us and stay with us. We've got some fascinating subjects coming up, and we look forward to seeing you at the next podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Frank and Steve podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit follow or subscribe on the link provided so you can stay up to date on new episodes. Until next time, stay healthy and stay safe.